The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the familiar sound of alien voices discussing matters of universal importance. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated sections, their forms ranging from the crystalline Zephyrians to the gaseous nebulans contained in their environmental suits. At the center of attention stood Ambassador Sarah Chun, the lone human representative, her simple blue uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by other delegates. The proposal before us today, announced Chancellor Vexthal, his scaled head gleaming under the chamber's artificial lights, concerns the upcoming military exercises in the Kepler Nebula. Each member species will demonstrate their elite combat units in various scenarios designed to test tactical superiority and battlefield effectiveness. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as species began mentally cataloging their finest warriors. The Corvin Imperium's cybernetically enhanced shock troops were legendary. The Altarian Federation's psionic commandos could bend reality itself. The Draxian Republic's armor battalions had never known defeat. Ambassador Chun raised her hand, her voice cutting through the alien chatter. Earth would like to participate in these exercises. The chamber fell silent for a moment before erupting in what could only be described as barely contained laughter. The sound was a cacophony of clicks, growls, harmonics, and mechanical whirs as different species expressed their amusement. "Surely you jest, human," sneered General Krex of the Corvin Imperium, his cybernetic eye glowing red with disdain. "Your species has been part of the Galactic Council for barely 50 standard cycles. What could your primitive warriors possibly offer against seasoned galactic combat units?" "With all due respect," added Commandant Zura of the Altarian Federation, her telepathic voice echoing in everyone's minds, "humans lack any significant evolutionary advantages. No natural weapons, no psychic abilities, no enhanced physiology. Your military technology, while adequate for planetary defense, is centuries behind galactic standards." Chancellor Vexthal attempted to restore order, though his own scaled features betrayed his skepticism. "Ambassador Chun, perhaps Earth would prefer to observe these exercises? There would be no shame in learning from more experienced military forces." Sarah Chen's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Earth appreciates the concern, but we have units specifically trained for extreme environments and unconventional warfare. We call them our jungle teams." This provoked another wave of alien mirth. High Admiral Thask of the Draxian Republic, his massive form encased in powered armor, even during diplomatic sessions, let out a booming laugh. "Jungle teams? What manner of designation is that? Do they swing from vines and hunt with primitive projectile weapons?" "The very name suggests a lack of technological sophistication," observed Science Minister Kell of the Zephyrian Collective, her crystalline form refracting light as she spoke. "Jungle warfare implies ground-based, close-quarters combat using organic cover. Such tactics are obsolete in an age of orbital bombardment and energy weapons." Ambassador Chun stood silently as the mockery continued, her dark eyes scanning the assembled aliens with an expression that might have been mistaken for resignation. In reality, she was memorizing faces, cataloging those who laughed loudest, those who remained diplomatically silent, and those few who watched with genuine curiosity. "Very well," she said when the laughter finally died down. "Earth's jungle teams will participate. We'll deploy a single squad of 12 operatives." 12. General Krex's cybernetic components whirred with what sounded like electronic amusement. The Corvin Imperium planned to send 3 full battalions. That's over 2,000 warriors. "The Altarian Federation will deploy our 6th Psionic Division," added Commandant Zura. 800 mind warriors capable of coordinating their thoughts across vast distances. 6,000 Draxian heavy infantry will represent our republic, declared High Admiral Thask, each warrior equipped with personal shields and plasma weaponry. The numbers continued to climb as each species announced their intended contributions. The smallest force mentioned was the Zephyrian Collective's 500 crystalline warriors, each capable of manipulating electromagnetic fields. Ambassador Chen nodded politely at each announcement. 12 will be sufficient for Earth. Chancellor Vexthal's expression was almost pitying. "Ambassador, I must ask one final time if Earth wishes to reconsider. The exercises will involve live combat scenarios. There are always casualties, even with safety protocols in place. 12 humans against tens of thousands of galactic elites. 12 will be sufficient, Sarah repeated, her tone final. As the session adjourned and delegates began filing out of the chamber, clusters of aliens gathered to discuss what they had just witnessed. The consensus was universal. Earth's representative had just committed her species to a humiliating defeat that would likely result in human casualties and a significant loss of face for the newest member of the Galactic Council. General Krex lingered near the human ambassador as she gathered her few possessions. I bear no ill will toward your species, Ambassador Chun. When this ends, perhaps Earth will understand the importance of knowing one's place in the galactic hierarchy. Sarah looked up at the towering cyborg, her expression unreadable. General Krex, has your intelligence division compiled a report on Earth's military history? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Naturally. Standard protocol for all member species. And what did that report conclude about human warfare capabilities? Krex's cybernetic eye dimmed as he accessed internal files. Primitive but persistent. Your species shows remarkable tenacity in the face of overwhelming odds, though this trait often leads to unnecessarily high casualties. Earth's military technology relies heavily on kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. Effective against other humans, but inadequate against galactic standards, Sarah finished for him. That was the conclusion, wasn't it? Indeed. Krex seemed puzzled by the direction of the conversation. Ambassador Chin shouldered her simple bag and walked toward the chamber exit. Just before reaching the threshold, she paused and looked back at the assembled alien delegates who were still discussing Earth's folly. General Krex, tell me something, she called back, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. In all your intelligence reports about human military capabilities, did anyone think to research what a jungle actually is? Before Krex could respond, she was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of confused aliens and a growing sense that perhaps they had missed something important in their analysis of humanity's newest warriors. The exercises were scheduled to begin in 30 standard cycles. The location, a series of uninhabited worlds in the Kepler Nebula, each presenting different environmental challenges and tactical scenarios. What none of the alien species realized was that they had just agreed to face an opponent whose very existence had been forged in the most hostile environment their home world had to offer. Earth's jungle teams were coming, and they were bringing their jungle with them. The transport ship Phantom drifted silently through the void of space, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Unlike the gleaming vessels of other Galactic Council members with their proud emblems and ceremonial markings, the Earth ship looked almost predatory in its simplicity. No unnecessary decorations, no broadcasting arrays announcing its presence, just smooth, angular surfaces that suggested function over form. Captain Maria Santos stood in the ship's modest bridge, watching the Kepler Nebula grow larger through the viewscreen. The swirling clouds of cosmic dust and gas created an ethereal backdrop for what would soon become a demonstration of military might. Already, she could see the massive formations of alien warships taking positions around the designated exercise zones. Impressive fleet, commented Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, her second-in-command, as he monitored incoming transmissions. The Corvin ships look like floating cities, must be carrying their entire expeditionary force. Size isn't everything, Santos replied, though she had to admit the alien vessels were magnificent in their own way. The Corvin battleships bristled with weapon arrays and defensive systems. The Altarian vessels seemed to shimmer with psychic energy, their hulls appearing to phase in and out of reality. The Draxian dreadnoughts were exactly what one would expect from a militaristic culture: angular, aggressive, and heavily armored. A communication signal chimed, and the bridge's main screen flickered to life, revealing Chancellor Vexthal's scaled features. Captain Santos, welcome to the Kepler military exercises. I trust your journey was uneventful. Perfectly smooth, Chancellor. The Phantom is ready to deploy our team whenever you give the word. Ah yes, your jungle team. Vexthal's tone was carefully neutral, but Santos could detect the underlying skepticism. I must inform you that several member species have expressed concerns about the safety of such a small unit. Perhaps your 12 operatives would benefit from observer status rather than active participation? Santos smiled, and there was something in that expression that would have made a wiser being reconsider their assumptions. With respect, Chancellor, my people didn't travel this far to watch. When do the exercises begin? In 6 standard hours. The first scenario involves securing a mining facility on Kepler-7, a heavily forested world with dense canopy coverage. The facility is held by simulated hostile forces, and each participating unit must demonstrate their ability to neutralize threats and secure the objective. Understood. Will there be any restrictions on tactics or equipment? Standard Council rules apply. No weapons of mass destruction, no targeting of life support systems, and all participants must use non-lethal training rounds. Beyond that, all conventional military assets are authorized. The transmission ended, and Santos turned to address her crew. You heard the Chancellor. Time to wake up our passengers. Deep in the ship's cargo bay, 12 figures lay in stasis pods, their bodies in perfect hibernation while their minds processed training scenarios and environmental data. As the pods began their revival sequence, each occupant slowly returned to consciousness with the fluid grace of predators awakening from rest. Sergeant First Class Elena Vasquez was the first to emerge, her dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail, her lean frame moving with the economy of motion that marked a professional soldier. She had served in 3 different jungle environments on Earth: the Amazon, the Congo Basin, and the dense rainforests of Southeast Asia. To her, vegetation wasn't just plant life, it was tactical terrain. Corporal David Kim unfolded from his pod with barely a sound, his slight build concealing reflexes honed by years of urban warfare in overgrown cities where nature had reclaimed human settlements. He could move through brush so quietly that recording equipment often failed to detect his passage. The others emerged with similar grace. Technical Sergeant Anna Okafor, whose expertise lay in improvised demolitions and trap construction. Lance Corporal Michael Thompson, a sniper who had once held a position for 6 days while enemy forces passed within arm's reach. Private First Class Lisa Park, whose knowledge of plant chemistry could turn any forest into a pharmacological arsenal. Each member of the team was a specialist, but more than that, they were part of a doctrine that alien military theorists had dismissed as primitive. They were students of an environment that had shaped human evolution, survivors of a training regimen that pushed the boundaries of what sapient beings could endure. Staff Sergeant Carlos Reyes, the team leader, was the last to fully activate. His weathered face bore the scars of a dozen conflicts, and his eyes held the 1,000-yard stare of someone who had seen the worst of human nature and emerged stronger for it. He surveyed his team with the quick, assessing glance of a professional checking his equipment. Status report, he said simply. All green, Sergeant, replied Vasquez. Gear checked and loaded. We've got full environmental suits, but honestly, the atmosphere readings for Kepler-7 are close enough to Earth standard that we probably won't need them. Weapons. Standard jungle loadout, confirmed Kim. Modified kinetic rifles, subsonic ammunition, bladed weapons, and enough surprises to keep things interesting. Reyes nodded and activated his communication unit. Captain Santos, this is Ground Team Alpha. We're ready for deployment. Santos' voice crackled through the speaker. Copy that, Sergeant. You've got some impressive company down there. The other teams are already beginning their deployments. Corvin forces are using drop pods that look like they could level a city block. The Altarians are teleporting their units directly to the surface using some kind of psychic transportation. The Draxians are conducting a full orbital assault with gunship support. And us. You're getting what you asked for, Sergeant. A quiet insertion in the deep forest, 30 kilometers from the objective. No backup, no orbital support, no extraction unless you call for it. Reyes smiled, and his team mirrored the expression. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. As the Phantom entered Kepler-7's atmosphere, the bridge crew monitored the other military forces beginning their assaults. The Corvin drop pods screamed down through the sky like meteorites, their atmospheric entry creating spectacular light shows that announced their arrival to anyone within hundreds of kilometers. The Draxian gunships formed attack formations, their engines roaring as they established air superiority over their chosen landing zones. In contrast, the Phantom descended through the atmosphere with barely a whisper, its experimental stealth systems bending light and sound around the hull. The ship settled into a forest clearing with such precision that the landing thrusters barely disturbed the surrounding vegetation. 12 figures emerged from the rear cargo bay, their movements swift and purposeful. Within minutes, they had vanished into the dense undergrowth, leaving behind no trace of their passage except for a transport ship that seemed to fade into the forest shadows like a ghost. High above, monitoring stations tracked the progress of various military units as they began their advance toward the mining facility. The alien forces moved with impressive coordination. Corvan cyber warriors established communication networks, Altarian psionics began their mental reconnaissance, and Draxian heavy infantry carved straight-line paths through the forest with their superior firepower. But in the deepest part of the forest, where the canopy was so thick that orbital sensors couldn't penetrate, something else was moving. Something that didn't register on any of the sophisticated detection systems. Something that treated the dense vegetation not as an obstacle to overcome, but as an ally to embrace. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's military had never bothered to develop energy weapons or psychic abilities. They had something far more dangerous. They had learned to become one with their environment, to turn the very planet into their weapon. The jungle teams were in their element now, and the real demonstration was about to begin. The mining facility on Kepler 7 sprawled across a cleared valley like a metallic infection on the planet's green skin. Massive extraction towers reached toward the sky, while processing plants hummed with simulated activity. According to the exercise parameters, the facility was defended by automated systems and holographic enemy forces programmed to resist any assault with realistic tactical responses. In the command center orbiting high above the planet, military observers from every major species monitored the progress of their respective forces. Massive holographic displays showed the movements of thousands of troops as they converged on the target from multiple directions. General Krex watched with satisfaction as his Corvan cyber warriors advanced in perfect formation. Their enhanced targeting systems identified threats with mechanical precision, while their coordinated assault protocols ensured maximum firepower concentration. Estimated time to target, 47 minutes, he announced to the observation deck. The Corvan Imperium will secure the facility before any other force reaches the perimeter. Your confidence is admirable, replied Commandant Zura of the Altarian Federation, though her mental voice carried subtle undertones of amusement. However, our psionic commandos have already begun phase-shifting reconnaissance units into the facility's interior. Physical barriers are irrelevant when one can manipulate the quantum structure of matter itself. High Admiral Thask of the Draxian Republic laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Stealth and precision are for species lacking the strength to take what they want. My heavy infantry will simply destroy any defenses and claim the facility through superior firepower. As the alien forces made their impressive advances, tactical displays updated in real time, showing their progress. The Corvan units moved with cybernetic efficiency, their enhanced soldiers covering ground at speeds that would have been impossible for unaugmented troops. The Altarian forces seemed to flicker in and out of existence as they used their psychic abilities to bypass terrain obstacles and defensive positions. Chancellor Vexthal studied the displays with interest, noting how each species applied their unique evolutionary advantages to the tactical problem. Then, his scaled brow furrowed as he noticed something odd about the readouts. Computer, display the position of Earth's military unit. The holographic display flickered, then displayed an error message, unable to establish lock on designated target. Unit position unknown. What do you mean, unknown? Vexthal's voice carried a hint of irritation. Run a full sensor sweep of the combat zone. The computer processed the request, scanning the entire region around the mining facility with every available detection system. Energy sensors, motion detectors, thermal imaging, electromagnetic spectrum analysis, even exotic matter scanners designed to detect cloaked vessels. Scan complete. No trace of Earth military unit detected. General Krex's cybernetic eye whirred as he processed this information. Perhaps the humans experienced equipment failure during insertion. Their primitive technology may not have survived atmospheric entry. But Ambassador Sarah Chun, who had been quietly observing from her position in the diplomatic section, smiled knowingly. I assure you, General, our team is exactly where they need to be. Then, where are they? Demanded High Admiral Thask. Our sensors can detect a single Draxian warrior from orbit. How can 12 humans simply vanish? They haven't vanished, Sarah replied. They've just remembered something that your species may have forgotten during your technological advancement. Before anyone could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The tactical display flashed urgent warnings as defensive systems around the mining facility started going offline one by one. What's happening? Chancellor Vexthal demanded. The computer's voice was clinical in its confusion, defensive grid experiencing systematic failures. Security sensors detecting no intruders. No energy weapons discharge recorded. No explosive devices detected. On the display, the mining facility's defensive perimeter began developing dark zones where monitoring systems simply stopped functioning. It wasn't the dramatic destruction that would accompany an alien assault, but rather a slow, creeping blindness that spread through the facility's security network like some kind of technological infection. General Krex enhanced his cybernetic vision, focusing on satellite feeds from the facility. Show me visual confirmation of these failures. The main screen shifted to a real-time feed from a security camera mounted on one of the facility's outer towers. The image showed the forest edge, apparently peaceful and undisturbed. Trees swayed gently in the alien breeze, their canopy creating deep shadows that shifted with the light. Then, just for a moment, one of those shadows moved wrong. It was the briefest glimpse, so quick that organic eyes might have missed it entirely. A darker patch within the darkness, a suggestion of movement that didn't match the wind patterns. And then it was gone. Computer, replay the last 30 seconds of that feed. Enhance and analyze. The footage played again, this time with computer enhancement highlighting movement patterns and thermal signatures. The analysis showed nothing. No heat signature, no electromagnetic disturbance, no quantum displacement. According to every sensor in the galactic arsenal, nothing had happened. But another security station went dark. Commandant Zura focused her considerable psychic abilities on the facility, attempting to detect mental activity that might indicate the presence of hostile forces. Her consciousness swept across the installation like an invisible searchlight, probing for the telltale thought patterns of sapient beings. She found the simulated defenders, their artificial minds following programmed responses with mechanical predictability. She sensed the various alien assault forces approaching from different directions, their thoughts blazing like beacons across the psychic spectrum. But in the facility itself, in the areas where defensive systems were failing, she found only the quiet mental emanations of local plant life. Trees and bushes and undergrowth, their simple awareness focused on sunlight and water and growth. There's nothing there, she reported, confusion coloring her mental voice. I'm detecting vegetation, but no sapient life forms. Vegetation. High Admiral Thask studied the tactical display with growing frustration. Are you suggesting that plants are somehow defeating military-grade security systems? Before Zira could respond, more alarms sounded. This time, the facility's central command center experienced a power fluctuation. Emergency lighting activated as primary systems began cycling through diagnostic routines. On the monitoring station, Chancellor Vexthal watched in amazement as camera feeds from inside the facility began showing the impossible. Corridors that had been brightly lit moments before were now filled with creeping shadows. Not the artificial darkness that would result from destroyed lighting, but natural shadows cast by vegetation that couldn't possibly be there. Computer, identify the source of the organic growth inside the facility. Unable to comply. No seeds, spores, or plant matter detected by atmospheric sensors. Growth patterns inconsistent with known botanical processes. General Krex's mechanical components hummed with increasing agitation. This is impossible. Plants cannot simply materialize inside a sealed facility. Ambassador Chen leaned forward in her chair, her voice carrying an edge of satisfaction. General, let me ask you something. When your intelligence analysts studied Earth's military capabilities, did they research what kinds of environments produced our soldiers? Of course. Earth's surface conditions atmospheric composition, gravity levels. No, general. I'm not asking about our planet's statistics. I'm asking if they studied our jungles. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Around the command center, alien observers began to realize they might have made a fundamental error in their assessment of human capabilities. On the tactical display, the mining facility's defensive perimeter continued to go dark, section by section, as if some invisible force was systematically dismantling the most advanced security systems in the galaxy without leaving any trace of its presence. And deep in the facility's central command structure, something that registered as ordinary plant life to every available sensor began to move with predatory intelligence. Inside the mining facility's central control room, automated systems continued their simulated operations while holographic defenders maintained their programmed patrol routes. The facility's artificial intelligence had been designed to present a realistic challenge to the galaxy's finest military forces, with adaptive defensive algorithms that could respond to conventional assault tactics. What it had not been programmed to handle was an enemy that didn't register as an enemy at all. Staff Sergeant Carlos Reyes pressed himself against the wall of the main corridor, his body completely motionless as a holographic guard patrol passed within inches of his position. His camouflage wasn't technological. No energy shields or optical distortion fields. Instead, he wore a ghillie suit crafted from local vegetation, its fibers woven with plant matter that made him indistinguishable from the facility's decorative foliage. The holographic guard sensors swept across his position multiple times, detecting nothing more threatening than a small shrub that had somehow taken root in an indoor planter. 20 meters away, Corporal David Kim hung, suspended in the facility's ventilation system, his body wedged between support struts in a position that would have been agony for most beings. He had been there for 47 minutes, waiting for the precise moment when shift rotations would leave a critical corridor unguarded. His breathing was so controlled that atmospheric sensors registered no change in air composition. Throughout the facility, 11 other figures moved with the patience of predators who had learned to hunt in Earth's most unforgiving environments. They didn't fight the building's security systems. They became part of them, blending into the artificial ecosystem with the same skill their ancestors had used to survive in jungles where every shadow might conceal death. Technical Sergeant Anna Okafor had spent the last hour studying the facility's power distribution network, not through computer terminals or technical manuals, but by following the physical conduits like an engineer following roots through soil. She understood the building's infrastructure the way a botanist understood a forest canopy, seeing patterns and relationships that technical diagrams could never convey. Her hands worked with surgical precision as she placed small charges at specific junction points. The explosives weren't designed to destroy. Destruction would be noticed. Instead, they created precisely calibrated power fluctuations that mimicked equipment aging and environmental stress. To the facility's diagnostic systems, it appeared that various components were simply reaching the end of their operational lifespan. In the observation deck high above Kepler 7, alien military leaders watched their forces making impressive progress toward the facility. The Corvin cyber warriors had established a perimeter and were beginning their assault on the outer defensive positions. Their enhanced targeting systems painted the facility with targeting lasers, while their coordinated fire support began systematically destroying defensive emplacements. The Altarian psionic commandos had begun their phase shift infiltration, using their mental abilities to manipulate quantum probabilities and appear inside defended positions. Their approach was elegant and sophisticated, bypassing physical barriers through applications of consciousness that most species couldn't comprehend. The Draxian heavy infantry took the most direct approach, their powered armor and plasma weapons carving straight-line paths through any obstacle. Their advance was inexorable, a demonstration of superior firepower and technological supremacy. But while 3 different alien forces approached the facility from the outside, something impossible was happening within its walls. Chancellor called one of the monitoring technicians, his voice tight with confusion. We're detecting botanical growth inside the facility at an unprecedented rate. Botanical growth? Chancellor Vexthal's scaled features twisted with bewilderment. Elaborate. Sensors indicate that plant matter is somehow establishing root systems in the facility's infrastructure. Vines are spreading through ventilation systems, moss is covering electronic components, and what appears to be flowering plants are blooming in the control rooms. General Krex enhanced his cybernetic analysis systems, focusing on the facility's internal sensor feeds. What he saw defied every principle of military engineering he had ever studied. The building's sterile corridors were becoming overgrown with vegetation that seemed to pulse with its own intelligence. Security cameras showed walls covered with creeping vines that somehow interfaced with electronic systems without damaging them. In some areas, the distinction between natural growth and artificial technology had become impossible to determine. "This is not possible," he stated flatly. "Plant life cannot integrate with military-grade electronic systems. Unless," Ambassador Chen said quietly, "the plant life isn't really plant life." Before anyone could process this statement, the facility's central defense grid went completely dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, but transformed. Camera feeds showed that the control room had become something that resembled a jungle clearing more than a military installation. Walls were covered with flowering vines, floors carpeted with soft moss, and what had once been computer terminals now looked like organic growth formations that pulsed with their own internal light. And in the center of this impossible garden, 12 figures emerged from concealment that had been so perfect it bordered on magic. Staff Sergeant Reyes stepped away from what had appeared to be a decorative tree, his camouflage shifting and flowing as synthetic materials separated from organic matter. His team materialized around him like spirits taking physical form, each one rising from hiding places that scanners had repeatedly identified as harmless vegetation. Control room secured. Reyes reported into his communication device, his voice calm and professional. Objective complete. The silence in the orbital observation deck was absolute. Dozens of alien observers stared at displays showing Earth's 12-person team standing casually in the facility's most heavily defended position, while 3 massive alien assault forces were still fighting their way through outer defensive perimeters. High Admiral Thass' powered armor servos whined as he leaned forward, studying the impossible scene. "Ow!" Our sensor showed nothing but plant growth. Ambassador Chen stood and walked to the main display, her expression carrying the satisfaction of someone whose point had finally been understood. "Admiral, let me explain something about Earth jungles. They're not just collections of plants growing in the same area. They're integrated ecosystems where every component supports every other component." She gestured toward the screen showing Reyes and his team. These soldiers weren't trained to fight in jungles. They were trained to become part of the jungle, to think like it, move like it, and, when necessary, to bring the jungle with them wherever they go. "You're saying they somehow transported actual vegetation?" Commandant Zira's psychic voice carried undertones of disbelief. "I'm saying they understood something that your advanced civilizations forgot during your technological evolution," Sarah replied. "The difference between using tools and becoming part of the environment itself." On the display, Technical Sergeant Okafor was demonstrating this principle by interfacing directly with the facility's computer systems using what appeared to be organic tendrils growing from her modified equipment. Her connection wasn't through standard data ports, but through biosynthetic interfaces that treated the building's electronic nervous system like the root network of a massive organism. "The camouflage, the infiltration techniques, even their equipment," Sarah continued. "All of it is based on biological principles that your species abandoned when you developed energy weapons and psychic abilities. You learned to dominate your environments. Humans learned to partner with them." General Krex's cybernetic eye dimmed as he processed this information. "You're describing a military doctrine based on primitive survival skills." "No, General. I'm describing a military doctrine based on the most sophisticated survival system ever developed. Earth's jungles created predators that could become invisible to anything that hunted by conventional means. Our soldiers just applied those same principles to your technology." As if to demonstrate this point, Sergeant Vasquez appeared on camera as she began dismantling the facility's central defense computer. But Instead of using tools, she was growing something that looked like a hybrid between a vine and a circuit board, allowing her to interface with the system at a level that transcended the boundary between organic and artificial intelligence. The other alien assault forces were still fighting their way through outer defensive positions, their impressive capabilities perfectly suited for conventional military operations. But conventional military operations assumed that the enemy would behave like an enemy, would register on sensors like a technological threat, would think like a civilized being using civilized tools. Earth's jungle teams had never been civilized. They had been shaped by an environment that killed the slow, the obvious, and the predictable. They moved like hunters who had learned that the difference between life and death was measured in heartbeats and silence. And now, as they completed their mission with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural, the galaxy's military elite began to understand that they had just witnessed something far more dangerous than superior technology or enhanced physiology. They had witnessed evolution in action. The silence in the orbital command center stretched for long moments as alien military leaders struggled to process what they had witnessed. On every screen, Earth's 12-person team moved through the mining facility with casual efficiency. Their mission parameters already exceeded, while 3 massive alien assault forces continued their grinding advance through outer defensive positions. Staff Sergeant Reyes stood in the facility's central control room, surrounded by what had once been sophisticated military hardware and was now an organic fusion of technology and living systems that defied every principle of engineering known to galactic science. His communication device, a hybrid creation that seemed to grow from his equipment harness like a flowering plant, crackled with incoming signals. Phantom Control, this is Ground Team Alpha. Facility secured. All objectives complete. No casualties. Captain Santos' voice came through the biosynthetic network with crystal clarity. Copy that, Sergeant. Mission time. Reyes checked his chronometer, though the passage of time had become somewhat fluid within the transformed facility. 17 minutes from insertion to objective completion. The number hit the observation deck like a physical blow. 17 minutes. The fastest projected completion time from any alien force had been 43 minutes, and that assumed optimal conditions with minimal resistance. General Krex's cybernetic systems ran rapid calculations, seeking some explanation for what his sensors had recorded. Impossible. The facility's defensive grid was rated to withstand assault by battalion-strength forces. 12 individuals cannot penetrate that level of security in 17 minutes. They didn't penetrate it, Ambassador Chen corrected, her voice carrying a satisfaction that had been building for decades of diplomatic mockery. They convinced it that they belonged there. She gestured toward the main display, where facility sensors continued to register the human team as part of the building's environmental systems. Your security protocols are designed to identify threats, energy signatures, mass displacement, unauthorized access attempts. They weren't designed to defend against an enemy that doesn't register as an enemy. Chancellor Vex Thull studied the readings with growing amazement. The facility's AI is categorizing your soldiers as facility maintenance systems. How is this possible? Because that's exactly what they became, Sarah explained. Earth's jungle warfare doctrine doesn't focus on overwhelming enemy defenses. It focuses on becoming part of the environment so completely that the distinction between attacker and ecosystem becomes meaningless. On screen, the demonstration continued as Corporal Kim interfaced with the facility's communication systems using what appeared to be a combination of advanced technology and biological adaptation. His equipment had grown root-like connections that tapped directly into the building's data networks, allowing him to access information flows without triggering any security protocols. The vines, the organic growth, even the changes to the facility's internal environment, Sarah continued. All of that represents a partnership between human soldiers and biosynthetic systems that your species consider primitive. High Admiral Thass' powered armor systems hummed with agitation. You're describing some form of technological symbiosis. Military forces that merge with their equipment to become hybrid organisms. Not merge, Admiral. Evolve. Sarah's tone carried the weight of centuries of human adaptation. When Earth's nations first began exploring jungle warfare, they discovered that traditional military thinking was not only useless, it was actively dangerous. Soldiers who relied on superior firepower or advanced technology died. The ones who survived learned to think like the jungle itself. Technical Sergeant Okafor appeared on camera, demonstrating this principle as she communicated with the facility's AI using a combination of verbal commands and bioelectric signals that her modified nervous system transmitted directly to the computer's core processes. The AI responded to her presence like a plant responding to sunlight, recognizing her as part of its operational environment rather than an external threat. Commandant Zira focused her considerable psychic abilities on the human team, attempting to understand their mental patterns. What she discovered defied her understanding of consciousness itself. Their thoughts, she reported, her mental voice tinged with awe. I can barely detect them. It's as if their consciousness has become distributed across multiple systems. They're not thinking like individual soldiers. They're thinking like components of a larger organism. Because that's exactly what they are, Sarah confirmed. Jungle teams don't operate as traditional military units with individual roles and hierarchical command structures. They function as a collective intelligence that adapts to environmental conditions in real time. The proof of this statement became evident as the human team began their extraction. Rather than following predetermined routes or established procedures, they moved through the facility with a fluidity that suggested constant communication and adaptation. When Sergeant Vasquez encountered a security checkpoint, Private Park immediately altered her own route to provide optimal support. When Lance Corporal Thompson identified a potential observation point, the entire team shifted their formation to maximize the advantage. They're not following any tactical manual, observed General Krex, his cybernetic analysis systems struggling to identify patterns in the human movements. Their coordination appears to be completely improvised. Not improvised, Sarah corrected. Evolved. Every member of a jungle team spends years learning to function as part of a collective organism. They develop intuitive responses to each other's movements, biological awareness of environmental changes, and the ability to adapt their behavior in real time based on subtle cues that your technology can't detect. As the human team reached the facility's extraction point, they demonstrated another aspect of their unique capabilities. Rather than calling for transport or fighting their way to a predetermined pickup zone, they simply vanished into the surrounding forest. One moment, they were visible on facility sensors. The next, they had become part of the planetary ecosystem itself. Where did they go? Demanded High Admiral Thask. They're exactly where they need to be, Sarah replied. The forest knows how to hide them until extraction is safe. High above the planet, the alien assault forces finally reached their objectives. The Corvin cyber warriors successfully penetrated the outer defensive perimeter, their enhanced soldiers demonstrating impressive coordination and firepower. The Altarian psionic commandos achieved their phase shift infiltration, their mental abilities allowing them to bypass physical barriers with elegant sophistication. The Draxian heavy infantry carved through defensive positions with unstoppable determination. All of them arrived at a facility that had already been secured, its systems transformed into something that resembled a garden more than a military installation. The sophisticated defensive grids that should have challenged galactic elite forces had been neutralized so completely that they no longer existed as recognizable technology. In the orbital observation deck, military leaders from dozens of species contemplated what they had witnessed. The exercise had been designed to showcase the superiority of galactic military forces, to demonstrate the tactical advantages of advanced technology, enhanced physiology, and psychic abilities. Instead, it had revealed the existence of a military doctrine that transcended conventional concepts of warfare entirely. Chancellor Vexthal broke the silence with a question that every observer was thinking. Ambassador Chun, how many of these jungle teams does Earth possess? Sarah smiled, and, for the first time since arriving at the Galactic Council, her expression carried no diplomatic reserve. Chancellor, Earth has been fighting in jungles for thousands of years. Every major landmass on our planet contains environments that shaped this doctrine. Every human military force has units trained in these methods. She paused, letting the implications settle into alien minds that were rapidly recalculating their assessment of human military capabilities. But, more importantly, Earth's jungle teams aren't just military units. They're proof of what happens when a species learns to work with their environment instead of dominating it. Every human colony, every space station, every ship in our fleet incorporates these principles. General Krex's cybernetic eye focused on the diplomatic section with new intensity. You're saying that all human military forces use these capabilities? I'm saying that all human activities use these capabilities, General. We didn't develop jungle warfare as a specialized military doctrine. We developed it as a survival strategy for our entire species. As the implications of this statement sank in, the gathered alien observers began to understand that they had just witnessed something far more significant than a military demonstration. They had encountered evidence of an evolutionary path that none of their species had considered, the development of technology that enhanced natural abilities rather than replacing them. On the surface of Kepler-7, the mysterious transport ship Phantom emerged from the forest shadows as silently as it had disappeared. 12 figures materialized from the vegetation like spirits taking physical form, their extraction as invisible to galactic sensors as their insertion had been. As the ship lifted off and disappeared into the cosmic dust of the Kepler Nebula, it left behind a mining facility that would puzzle xenobiologists for decades to come. The organic modifications to the installation's infrastructure didn't decay or disappear. They continued to grow and adapt, creating a hybrid ecosystem that functioned more efficiently than the original design. And in the orbital observation deck, the galaxy's military elite contemplated the uncomfortable realization that humanity's newest addition to the Galactic Council might not be the primitive species they had assumed. Earth's jungle teams had shown them that evolution wasn't just about developing superior weapons or enhanced abilities. Sometimes it was about learning to become one with the very forces that other species try to conquer. The mocking laughter had stopped. In its place was a respectful silence that acknowledged the presence of predators who had never forgotten how to hunt.